I first met Sarah in the summer of 1987 at a lively nightclub in New York. Neither of us expected that one glance would change our entire lives. Back then, I was just a 26-year-old working as a sales clerk, and she was a beautiful, confident college student majoring in marketing. It was a chaotic night, crowded, loud, music blaring. But when I looked into Sarah's eyes, everything else faded. We exchanged a few casual stories, and somehow, something deeper began to form between us. Just 2 months later, I asked her to move in with me. Over time, Sarah and I built a wonderful life together. We got married after 2 passionate years of dating, when our love felt unbreakable. We spent many late nights talking about dreams and future plans. Even when work wasn't easy, our trust in each other was a rock-solid anchor. Eventually, we had 2 amazing kids. The early years of parenthood were beautiful, full of children's laughter and precious memories. But life isn't always filled with joy. In the early years of marriage, I faced challenges I never imagined. One of those challenges was intimacy. After having kids, things started to change. Sarah and I often felt tired, even distant, though our love was still there. Sleepless nights with babies and exhausting workdays slowly drained the closeness we once had. I remember nights lying next to each other in bed, staring in silence, unable to reconnect like we once did. I remember that feeling clearly. We couldn't talk openly about it, but we both felt something missing. Intimacy faded, and I felt like Sarah was no longer the same. She began to avoid physical closeness, and I didn't know what to do. I was still young, just 30, but I felt like I was disappearing in my own marriage. I didn't want to hurt Sarah or see our family slip into a cold routine, but intimacy in marriage shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be joy, it should be connection. I thought about bringing it up many times, but I was afraid. I didn't want to wound her or trigger something that might break us. Still, after years of emotional distance, I knew I had to change. I started taking care of my health, losing weight and trying to reclaim the version of me Sarah once fell in love with. After 2 years of hard work, I lost over 88 pounds, and not only did I feel healthier, I felt confident again. To my surprise, as I changed, Sarah seemed more drawn to me. Every time we were together, her eyes lit up like she was seeing a different man. That feeling, being wanted, being loved, helped me find myself again in our marriage. After work, we'd enjoy romantic evenings like when we first met. I never thought losing weight could revive so much, but I was wrong. It opened a new chapter for us. We went on to live happily for many more years, until something happened that shattered everything. Sarah went on a trip with her sisters, and something I never imagined took place. One afternoon, just after work, while driving home, I got a call from her. Her voice was shaky, panicked. I couldn't understand what was going on. Then came the words I couldn't believe. John, I did something I can't forgive myself for. When I heard Sarah say that, it felt like the world around me froze. I had grown used to the peace of our life together, believing we had weathered every storm. But now, I was staring down a truth I couldn't accept. What did you do, Sarah? I asked, my voice low, trying to stay calm while something inside me shattered. I cheated. I'm so sorry, John. I don't even know why I did it. She sobbed. My whole body trembled. Everything I thought was stable and solid collapsed in an instant. She kept talking, but I could barely hear it anymore. I just sat there, gripping the wheel, unable to believe what I'd just heard. That night, I realized it wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was everything that had been eroding over the years. Our intimacy had faded, not overnight, but gradually. The lack of fulfillment, the disconnection, it had worn me down. 20 years is a long time to endure a marriage where intimacy feels forced, not because we didn't love each other, but because our bodies changed. And neither of us knew how to stop the drift. I remembered the early years, when we were young, when intimacy was electric, when sex was a natural extension of our bond. But over time, jobs, family, and routines wore me down. I wasn't the man Sarah once fell for anymore. I had gained weight, not just from eating but from a sedentary life. At times, I felt powerless to fix it. That helplessness convinced me things were beyond repair. As our sex life dulled, I saw clear signs of a shift between us. Sarah didn't seem attracted to me the same way anymore, and I no longer felt that fire either. I felt alone, lost, disappointed. I realized that if I didn't change something, I'd lose everything. One day, staring at myself in the mirror, I made a decision. I couldn't let it keep slipping. I was tired of not recognizing the man I'd become. So I chose to transform, not just for her, but for me. I had to lose the weight, regain my shape, and most importantly, find my confidence again. I committed to daily workouts, changed my diet, and refused to give up. Each morning I woke up early to exercise. Every night I worked to improve myself. In 2 years, I lost more than 176 pounds, and the feeling was incredible. I used to ask the mirror if change was even possible. Now I had my answer. The transformation didn't just benefit me, it changed our marriage. After the weight loss, it felt like we were starting over. Our intimacy reignited like when we first fell in love. Every touch was connection, joy, and the kind of spark we had forgotten. Sarah still loved me, and I loved her. I never imagined weight loss could revive a marriage, but it did. We went to bed each night feeling close again. No more cold silences, no more emotional distance. That didn't mean we had no challenges, but at least we had found our way back to love. The years rolled on, and though memories began to blur, our love had been reignited. Life was never easy, but I believed that with enough care, we could survive anything together. After I changed and our marriage reignited, I truly believed nothing could shake the foundation we'd rebuilt. Sarah and I were living the days we thought were gone. We traveled more, shared everything, thoughts, plans, even the tiniest daily moments. No more distance, no awkwardness in bed, no turning our backs to each other at night. I was certain this relationship was finally unbreakable. There were no secrets between us. Phones, emails, social media accounts. Everything was open, not because we needed control, but because we didn't need to hide anything. We even used a location sharing app, not out of suspicion, but peace of mind. I still remember the night Sarah's car broke down during a solo trip to the night market north of Portland. Thanks to the app, I found her before the streets got too empty. She hugged me tight and said, "Only you make the world feel safe." We always believed trust was the anchor that kept our marriage strong. Many friends split up after 10 or 15 years, mostly from lack of trust. But Sarah and I were different. Even when other women noticed me after my transformation, I never crossed the line. No flirty texts, no lingering glances. She knew that, and I was proud of it. Sarah, in return, had always been the woman I trusted with everything. She was the ideal wife, a devoted mother, and a loving grandmother. Every evening, when we watched TV together, she'd gently touch my hand and ask, "Are you happy?" I always said yes, without hesitation. But now, when I look back, I wonder if those questions were her way of checking something, not just simple concern. I started noticing more things. A few times Sarah went out without turning on her location sharing. She said she forgot, but something inside me stirred. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to ruin the warmth we had reclaimed. But somehow, after I changed, a part of Sarah changed too. Not in the way she loved me, but in how she saw herself. I remember the last serious conversation we had about our feelings. It was on my 55th birthday, almost 8 months ago. Sarah prepared a romantic dinner at home, just the two of us. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "You're glowing, John. Sometimes I feel like I'm a few steps behind you." I held her hand and smiled. "We're walking together. Just look beside you." I'm always right there. At the time, I believed that was enough, that it eased her moment of insecurity. But now, I wonder, did those insecurities grow stronger each day? While I was trying to become a better man, was she starting to question her own worth? The deeper the trust, the deeper the pain when it breaks. I'm not someone who suspects easily, but one thing I've never forgotten: betrayal, when it comes from the one you trust most, isn't just painful. It's complete collapse. I remember that morning clearly. Sarah packed her suitcase, saying she was heading to Seattle for a few days with her two sisters, just to relax and shop. I had no reason to doubt her. I kissed her forehead, told her to be careful, then left for work like usual. There was just one thing I couldn't shake. When I asked, "Turn on location sharing just in case something happens," she paused briefly, forced a smile, and said, "Of course." But that night, her location stopped showing. A few hours later, I got a short message. "I need to talk to you. It's important." When I called her back, her voice trembled, like she'd been through something traumatic. I'll never forget the first word she gasped. "John, this shouldn't have happened, but I let it happen." I drove home in complete silence, my chest tightening with every mile. Sarah hadn't replied to my message. Her last text, "I need to talk to you, it's important," kept echoing in my head like a warning. I tried not to overthink it, kept telling myself maybe it was urgent, maybe a misunderstanding. But the moment I stepped through the door and saw the kitchen light still on, I knew a storm was waiting for me. My phone rang just as I was hanging my coat. Her name lit up on the screen. I answered, her voice cracked between uneven breaths. "John, I need you to listen. Please." I sat down, gripping the arms of the chair like I was bracing for impact. "I betrayed you," she said, her voice trembling. "I slept with another man. He's the husband of a woman I recently met on the trip." I couldn't speak. My throat was dry. The room turned so cold I clenched my fists just to stay grounded. She kept going, like she was unloading a bomb. "We met them at a beachside bar," she said. "It started with a few drinks. Jenna, Megan, and I were looking for a table. They invited us over, and we had a great time. The couple's names were Tyler and Grace. They're from Arizona, visiting for the holidays." I closed my eyes, trying to picture it. Sarah, my wife, laughing with a stranger under dim lights, music thumping, glasses clinking. I felt nausea rise up in my throat. I didn't plan to do anything wrong, John, but after Jenna and Megan went back to their room, I stayed. I drank more than I thought I would. I was dizzy, but I kept smiling, kept sitting there. Her voice cracked again. And then, things got out of control. Tyler, he touched my hand, then Grace encouraged it. They told me I was beautiful, said I had a seductive look. I don't know what happened to me, John. I felt like I wasn't myself. I went back to their room. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She, the person I trusted more than anyone, had left her hotel to go to a stranger's room? A couple? I said nothing. I just listened. If I had opened my mouth, I might have screamed loud enough to hurt myself. I had sex with Tyler while Grace watched. I don't know what I was thinking. The next morning I woke up between them. I panicked. I ran back to my room. And Jenna saw me. I told her everything. She said I had to confess or she would. I put the phone down on the table, still hearing her voice shaking through the speaker. Every word she spoke felt like a dagger straight to my chest. I stood up, walked into the bathroom, splashed water on my face. But it did nothing. The truth was still there staring back at me. The woman I believed would hold my hand until the end had done something unforgivable. I returned to my seat and picked up the phone. My voice was hoarse. "You weren't out of control. No one forced you. You made a choice. That wasn't a mistake, it was a decision," she sobbed. I know. I hate myself. I don't know why I did it. I just wanted to feel wanted, just once. I'm sorry. I love you. I've never loved anyone but you." I cut her off. "You love me, but you still undressed for another man, with his wife watching? And then came home planning to bury it forever? If Jenna hadn't threatened you, would you have said anything?" Silence. "You destroyed everything, do you realize that?" I hung up. The house was terrifyingly quiet. My morning coffee was still half full on the table. Everything around me looked the same. But I knew, from that moment on, my life would never be the same again. The only question left wasn't why. It was, how much more can I take before I completely fall apart? I sat there all night without sleeping, not because I wanted to dwell on what happened, but because I couldn't stop. The image of Sarah lying between two strangers in a hotel room replayed in my head like a jammed reel. Stuck on repeat, impossible to shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, the details she shared became sharper, louder, more painful. I don't even remember the last time I truly cried. But when the clock ticked past 3 a.m., and the darkness outside felt like a bottomless pit, tears rolled down my face, burning hot. I didn't cry from jealousy. I didn't cry from pride. I cried because the one woman I trusted above all else was the one who destroyed everything. We had built a home together, welcomed our first child, battled through debt, and smiled proudly as our kids grew up. The framed photos on the wall, the family birthdays, even the little cracks we had once patched up. I thought it was all solid. But in one night, with one decision, Sarah shattered it all. By 6 a.m. I got up, opened the closet, and pulled out an old suitcase from last year's trip. I started packing, not because I was running away, but because I had to leave this space before she returned. If I saw her face, I wouldn't be able to hold back. I'd say things I'd regret, or worse, I'd start to hate her. And I never wanted to hate someone I once loved more than anything. I left a short note on the kitchen table. I know everything. I don't need to hear anything else. We're done. I'll file for divorce this week. Pack your things and be gone before I get back. I walked out the door, carrying a few clothes and a pain so deep no words could describe it. I drove nearly 3 hours south to my eldest daughter's house, Emma. When I arrived, she had just come back from dropping her kid off at school. She saw me standing quietly at the door, suitcase in hand, eyes hollowed with fatigue, and said nothing. She just wrapped her arms around me. After putting her child to bed, I told her everything. No sugarcoating, no skipping details. I needed someone to know. I had to say it all out loud, or else it would crush me from the inside. When I got to the part about Sarah willingly going to that couple's room, Emma dropped her head to the table and sobbed. "I can't believe Mom did that to you," she whispered. "I knew you two had issues, but she was the one always preaching loyalty, honesty, family first. She betrayed everything she ever taught us." I didn't respond. I just stared out the window, where the morning sunlight had started to flood in. It was beautiful, but inside, all I felt was cold. That afternoon, I texted my lawyer and scheduled a meeting for the next morning. I had thought it through carefully. There was no going back. Sarah hadn't stumbled into anything. She made a choice. No one forced her. There was no accident. It was a deliberate decision, one that went against everything we had built over 33 years. I also texted both of our kids, telling them things would be okay, even if nothing would ever be the same. I didn't ask them to take sides. Sarah was still their mother, still their kids' grandmother. But as for me, I could no longer see her the same way. I sat in Emma's living room, staring at the family photos on her shelf. One of them showed us together at the Grand Canyon a few years back. Sarah still looked radiant in that picture, her arm around my shoulder, her eyes full of trust. I wanted to smash that frame, but I didn't, because in that moment, I had truly been happy. I thought about the quiet nights, when we'd lie in bed together, saying nothing, yet understanding everything. When she had back pain, I'd rub her shoulders until she fell asleep. When I was exhausted from work, she'd bring me food at the office. Were those moments real? Or were they just parts of a 3-decade performance? I don't know. But I do know one thing. The woman I once loved deeply no longer exists. Sarah, the woman who smiled when I proposed, who once called me the strongest wall in her life, is now just a name tied to a wound that won't heal. I will divorce her. Not out of anger, but because I choose to protect what's left of myself. before I fall apart the way she did. 3 days after I left the house, Sarah sent me an email nearly 3 pages long. She asked to meet once, not for forgiveness, but to tell me the whole truth. No more hiding, no more pretending it was an accident. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to cut ties forever, but another part needed to hear it, directly from her lips, without excuses. We met at a small cafe downtown, a quiet place where no one knew us. She arrived first, sitting still like a statue in the corner, gripping a cold coffee with both hands. When I walked in, Sarah looked up. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her face was so thin, I barely recognized the woman I had lived with for over 3 decades. I sat down, keeping my distance. No hugs, no touching, not even a polite greeting. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But at the very least, I owe you the truth." I nodded. "Go ahead." She swallowed hard, then looked at me like she was trying to hold on to the last shred of love between us. "I've been feeling insecure for the last 2 years. Ever since you lost weight. Ever since other women started noticing you more. I know it's unfair. I should have been proud. But instead, I felt left behind. Like I wasn't the only woman in your eyes anymore." I looked her straight in the eye. "So that's why you slept with a stranger? In front of his wife?" She closed her eyes. "No. I've had this twisted fantasy in my head for a long time. I don't even know where it came from. Maybe from the internet, or all those people talking about liberating experiences. Or maybe I just felt lonely in all the routine." I clenched my fists. "You call that liberation? Or was it premeditated betrayal?" She choked, tears falling onto the table. "I used to imagine doing something wild, just once in my life, before it was too late, but I never planned to make it real. It started with simple conversations with Tyler. He was a client I'd only spoken with on the phone. When I found out he and his wife were coming to Oregon, I had a vague thought, but I told no one." "Your sisters didn't know anything?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not really. Jenna sensed something, but I kept it hidden. I told them I was just meeting a client for work." I leaned back, my stomach turning. "And then?" I asked, though I already knew where it was going. "That night, we drank, like I told you. I wasn't drunk to the point of blacking out. I was fully aware. I went with them to their room. I made that choice. I thought I could have the experience and forget it. But the next morning, waking up between them, I just wanted to disappear. I stayed silent for a long time." Sarah sobbed. "I know. I destroyed everything. I burned down what we built. But I swear to you, John, I've never done anything like this before. And I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day." I let out a dry laugh. "You loved me, but you still betrayed me. Do you remember? Every night we'd sleep, you'd turn your back to me. But now, you let some stranger touch you, with his wife watching." She wept. "I have no excuse. But I want you to know, I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand how I could throw everything away for one stupid night. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't want hatred to destroy the person you are. Please remember the good we had." I stood up, feeling completely hollow. "I don't hate you," I said slowly. "I just mourn the woman I once loved. The one I thought would hold my hand to the end. But she's gone. And you're just a stranger wearing her face." I turned and walked away, leaving behind a silent cafe and a broken woman hunched over in the ruins of what she'd destroyed. I didn't look back. Not once. As I stepped outside, the April wind struck my face. Cold, but sobering. It felt like something had been scrubbed clean. Not the pain, but the confusion. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I had forgiven Sarah in my mind 100 times. But every time I imagined continuing life beside her, holding her like nothing happened, I felt sick. Not because she cheated physically, but because she planned it, deceived me for so long, and worst of all, never intended to confess. I couldn't share a home with someone who sat across from me every morning, smiling, pouring coffee, while her mind hid something so filthy. That afternoon, I called the lawyer and confirmed the divorce process. Assets would be split according to the law. No private negotiations, no strings attached. I wanted it over. Then, I wrote one final email to Sarah. Sarah, I won't be contacting you again after this email. All further communication will go through the attorney. There's nothing left to say, and nothing left to hold on to. I don't blame you for your emotions or the chaos inside you, but I can't forgive your actions. I don't hate you. I don't resent you. But the love I had for you, it died the night you chose to sleep with someone else. I hope you live true to the person you're trying to understand, John. I sent the message and immediately blocked her number. I also removed her access from all shared accounts and deleted the location sharing app. I no longer cared where she was, what she was doing, whether she was crying or trying to make amends. None of it mattered to me anymore. Emma was the only one who knew everything. She quietly supported me, though she still kept in contact with her mother. I didn't interfere. I didn't want the kids to be forced to pick sides or for the mother-daughter bond to break just because my marriage fell apart. A week later, I moved into a short-term rental apartment in the western suburbs of Salem. It had one bedroom, small but quiet enough. Each morning I got up early, brewed coffee, and sat by the window, watching the slow flow of traffic. Sometimes it was so peaceful I could almost forget anything had collapsed, but there were nights I'd wake up mid-dream, still hearing Sarah calling my name from the kitchen, still seeing her step out of the bathroom with wet hair and that familiar scent of body wash lingering. I didn't try to forget. I let the memories come and go, like waves hitting the shore and pulling back. I didn't fight them, I didn't chase them, but I didn't let them drown me either. One evening, while sorting through divorce papers and the house sale documents, I came across an old handwritten letter from Sarah, dated 1993, when I was still stationed in Hawaii. She wrote that every day without me felt like a year, that she couldn't wait for me to come home so we could raise a family and build a life together. I sat there reading those tear-stained lines again and again, then folded it up and burned it. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I refused to let memories be imprisoned by lies. I decided to buy a small house near where Emma lives. Nothing big, but it has a yard. I want to plant trees, get a dog, and, when I can, have my grandkids over for weekend sleepovers. I also accepted a part-time job at an old friend's accounting office. Not for the money, but to stay busy and grounded. Sarah is still staying at her mother's house, according to Emma. Apparently, she still believes that one day I'll get over everything and come back. But I won't. I refuse to exist in a marriage where trust is shattered like glass on concrete. I don't want a life filled with what-ifs. I choose freedom, I choose finality. I choose to be honest with my emotions, even when that emotion is emptiness. Maybe one day I'll fall in love again. Maybe I'll meet someone who views the vow of marriage as sacred, not some fleeting thrill. But for now, I just want to learn how to stand again, with myself and by myself. The sale of the home Sarah and I built together took more than 3 weeks to finalize, but when I signed the transfer papers, I didn't feel the regret I once feared. That house had once been a home, filled with laughter, cozy dinners, and midnight embraces. But now, every corner and echo in that bedroom only reminded me of one thing. The person who helped build it chose to tear it down with her own hands. The small office supply store in Portland that Sarah and I co-owned was also handed over to an old friend, Paul. I hesitated at first, because that place wasn't just a business. It was where I had poured over 15 years of my life, building trust, a brand, and loyal customers. But then I realized, not everything I invested in was meant to be kept. Some things are meant to close, so someone new can continue the dream, while I walk away. The money from the house and business was split exactly as outlined in the divorce documents. I didn't try to take more. I didn't want to drag the past along one more minute. I used my share to buy a small wooden house near Crater Lake in southern Oregon, a place I once camped at with my daughter when she was little. No nearby neighbors, no noise, just the wind through the pines and the still surface of the lake. At 59, I'm learning how to live alone for the first time in over 30 years. No familiar voice greeting me in the morning, no dinner waiting when I get home, no one texting to ask where I am when I'm late. At first, the silence was haunting. But slowly, I've come to be grateful for it. The quiet gives me space to hear myself again. I started doing things I once dismissed as trivial, learning guitar, watercolor painting, and hiking trails I had only dreamed of in my younger years. I booked a 12-hour train ride from Oregon to Montana just to see the snowy mountains and sip coffee by the window. During a stop in a small town called Kalispell, I ran into Noah, my college best friend I hadn't spoken to in almost 20 years. Still tall and slender, more silver in his hair, but the same warm smile. We drank beer at our old hangout spot, sharing stories of what we lost, mistakes we made, and moments we thought we wouldn't survive. Noah had gone through a divorce too. From an emotionally abusive marriage, he understood the betrayal. But he said something that stuck with me. Freedom isn't walking away from someone, it's when they no longer control how you feel. From that day on, I lived differently. I stopped checking my phone every morning. I didn't stalk Sarah's social media in silence. I shut down all accounts connected to her and ended every remaining tie. I also slowly opened up to this new life. I joined a yoga class for middle-aged men in Ashland, where I met others also rebuilding. We didn't talk much about the past. We talked about how tight our belts were during stretches, how to smoke brisket right, and our summer plans to hike waterfalls. Sometimes, when I sit on the porch, watching the lake glisten in the sun, I think about Sarah. No longer angry, no longer sad, just as if I'm remembering someone who once passed through my life, left footprints, then vanished. I don't know what the future holds. I no longer expect anything grand, but I'm sure of one thing. I'll live the rest of my life without depending on anyone else to feel worthy. Freedom? It doesn't come from solitude, but from knowing exactly who deserves to stay in your life. And for the first time in 33 years, I'm learning how to be that person. For myself. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, I realized I had completely entered a new chapter. No noise, no drama, and not the crushing loneliness I once feared. What remained was a profound sense of relief. I no longer had to hold on to something that had rotted from the inside out. Mornings at the small house near Crater Lake usually start with the sound of wind rustling through the pines, the smell of fresh coffee filling the kitchen, and sometimes a soft jazz playlist playing in the background. I've developed the habit of journaling every morning in a leather notebook, a way to remind myself I'm living, not just existing. I no longer care about Tyler or his wife. I haven't looked them up, haven't asked around. They belong to Sarah's past, and I've stepped away from that. To me, they're no longer real people, just symbols of a wound I've already stitched shut and have no intention of reopening. One time, Emma asked if I wanted to sue them for harassment or marital interference, because legally I could. I just laughed. "Why would I, sweetheart?" I said. "To fight for something I chose to let go of?" A few friends, after finding out I was living alone out in the woods, gently suggested I move on, a polite way of saying start dating again. I always said no, until one Saturday afternoon at a local photography workshop, I unexpectedly met Lorraine. She was in her early 50s, a former art teacher living in Medford. Our conversation started with lighting and landscape paintings, then flowed into stories about cats, gardening, and the broken pieces we each carried from past marriages. Lorraine didn't ask too much about my past, nor did she share much about hers, maybe because we both understood. What mattered wasn't what had happened, but how we felt in the present. The feeling of being heard, not judged, and not bound. We saw each other a few more times, sometimes hiking, other times reading together at a small cafe in historic Jacksonville. No one rushed anything. No one expected anything. We let things unfold naturally, like a quiet stream slowly shaping both its banks, without needing to know where it's going. One evening, after I dropped her off from an outdoor concert, Lorraine took my hand and said, "John, I don't know how long this will last, and I'm not even sure if it's love, but I like the way you look at me. No pressure, no expectations. I feel free." I smiled. So do I. Freedom, a word that sounds simple but comes at the cost of many breakdowns, many long nights of questioning your worth after everything you believed in falls apart. But now, I no longer need anyone to validate my worth. No woman to complete me. I choose to walk beside Lorraine, not to fill a void, but to share. Gently, honestly, without obligation. I'm not looking for promises. I just want to live each day fully with those who truly deserve to be in my life. One afternoon, while sitting by the lake watching the sun dip behind the trees, Lorraine turned to me, smiled, and asked, "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" I answered, "No, I don't think so, but I do believe we get to choose how we live after it happens. And that's what I've chosen. Not to forgive the one who betrayed me, not to flee from the past, but to move forward, with steady feet, a lighter heart, and a soul no longer chained to what's been lost." 3 months after the divorce hearing ended, I woke up on a sunny Sunday morning with no weight in my chest. The sunlight streamed through the pine-framed window and hit a small note I had taped to the ceiling. Freedom doesn't come from walking away from someone. It comes from finding yourself again. I read it every morning, not to forget the past, but to remind myself that I did the right thing. After everything, I no longer wanted to return to anything that made me question my worth. Sarah called Emma a few times, not to ask me back, just to check on your father, Emma told me with a reluctant tone. I just laughed and told her, "Tell your mom I'm doing fine, just learning how to live honestly." I didn't care what Sarah thought, where she was, or what she was trying to do with the mess she left behind. Everyone pays for their choices. I've paid mine, fully, painfully, but clean. At first I thought time might soften me, that one day I'd miss the familiar bedtime hugs, the shared dinners, the hand on my shoulder after a long day. But strangely, the further I got, the clearer it became. I had once loved an illusion. A woman I thought was a life partner turned out to be someone who stayed only when the road was smooth. I no longer wake up feeling lost. On the contrary, I've started to feel life quietly return with every breath. I sleep better. I eat on schedule, exercise regularly, and spend time learning new things I used to avoid with the excuse of being too busy. I joined an outdoor travel group for single adults in midlife. At first, I just wanted to hike and enjoy nature, but I discovered something even more valuable: the freedom to be myself among strangers. No need to pretend, no need to play the role of the perfect husband. I could laugh loudly, speak honestly, and not be judged if I teared up sharing the darkest days of my life. On a trip to Mount Hood, while I sat by the campfire with my knees pulled in, a woman named Cassandra, about 52, widowed 4 years ago, looked at me and said, "You seem like the kind of man who doesn't like to look back." I smiled and replied, "I don't hate the past. I just hate letting it hold me down." She nodded, like she understood that all too well. We didn't exchange phone numbers, no promises, just two people who met briefly along the way. And somehow, that made it easier. No expectations, no ties, just pure and honest presence. I came home the next day, opened my laptop, and began to write. Not for anyone to read, just to put into words what I thought, what I felt, and how I made it through. Maybe one day I'll turn it into a book, or simply leave it for my grandkids, so they'll know their grandfather once stood back up from a fall that almost broke him. House documents, bank accounts, an independent life. I've rebuilt it all from scratch. I don't need much: a small home, an old pickup that still runs fine, a few genuine friends, and a heart that's healed enough not to carry resentment anymore. I'm no longer the John I was last year, the man who believed loving enough could save a marriage. Now I know love isn't enough without the right choices and loyalty, and when someone chooses to betray you, it's not a mistake. It's who they are. So no, I don't have regrets. I once hurt so deeply I wondered if there was anything left to live for. But now, every morning, I walk outside, look up at the sky, and tell myself, there's still so much waiting out there. And most importantly, this time, I don't need anyone beside me to feel whole. John's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest loss is also the doorway to rebirth. After the devastating betrayal in a marriage that spanned over 3 decades, he didn't crumble. He faced it, let go, and rebuilt his life. From a man thrown into the abyss, John rose with a free heart, learning to love himself and reclaim his worth. The peace he has now didn't come from anyone else. It came from his own bold choice. What do you think of John's decision? Would you have done anything differently in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more real, emotional, and thought-provoking stories about family life.